I was standing behind a marble pillar at my son's wedding reception when I heard my new daughter-in-law tell her friend she was going to have me committed all so she could steal my beach house. I didn't say a word. I walked straight to the bar, ordered a double whiskey, and smiled at everyone like the picture-perfect mother of the groom. What happened next changed everything. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from because this story is about to get wild. The grand ballroom at the Riverside Country Club looked like something straight out of a magazine. White roses everywhere, crystal chandeliers throwing soft light over 200 guests, and my son, David, looking dashing in his navy tuxedo. At 63, I should have been the happiest mother alive. Instead, I was hiding behind a pillar, eavesdropping on my brand new daughter-in-law. The plan is simple, Jessica whispered to her maid of honor, champagne flute in hand. We give it 6 months, maybe a year. Document everything. When she forgets names, when she repeats stories, when she seems confused, then we have her evaluated. Isn't that a bit harsh? Her friend asked. Jessica laughed softly. She's 63 and alone in that big house. It's actually mercy. Plus, David deserves that beach house after everything she's put him through. My blood turned to ice. The beach house. The one my late husband, Robert, and I bought 30 years ago. The one where David learned to surf. Where we spent every summer. Where Robert proposed to me 45 years ago. I stepped back from the pillar, my heart pounding. Jessica caught my eye across the room and waved, that perfect, practiced smile plastered on her face. I waved back because that's what mothers do at their sons' weddings. We smile, we wave. We pretend everything is wonderful. But let me tell you something about pretending. I've had 63 years of practice. David appeared beside me, loosening his tie. Mom, you look pale. You feeling okay? Just tired, sweetheart. It's been a long day. Well, Jessica wants to talk to you about Christmas plans. She has some ideas about traditions. I forced a smile. I bet she does. How lovely. We'll chat later. He squeezed my shoulder and walked back to his bride. I watched him go, remembering the little boy who used to build sandcastles with me, who cried when he scraped his knee, who once promised he'd always take care of his mama. That little boy was gone. In his place stood a 32-year-old man who'd spent the last 6 months defending a woman he'd known for 8, over the mother who'd raised him alone. After his father died, I walked back to the bar and ordered another double whiskey. The bartender raised an eyebrow. Rough day? You could say that. I took a sip, feeling the burn slide down my throat. Tell me, do you believe in karma? He chuckled. In my line of work, Mum, I've seen enough to believe in everything. Good answer. I finished my drink and set the glass down. Something told me that whiskey was going to make a comeback later. 3 months earlier, David had brought Jessica home for the first time. She was everything you'd expect a man to fall for, blonde, 28. And with one of those smiles that could sell ice to penguins. Mom, this is Jessica, David had said, practically glowing. Jessica, this is my mother, Margaret. But everyone calls her Maggie, Mrs. Cooper. Jessica had gushed, pulling me into one of those hugs that's a little too tight. David's told me so much about you. I've been dying to meet the woman who raised such an incredible man. Even then, something about her felt off, too polished, too perfect. Like she'd rehearsed every word. Please, call me Maggie, I said. It's wonderful to meet you too, dear. We sat in my living room while she complimented everything from my antique vases to my coffee choice. David hung on her every word like she was quoting scripture. How did you two meet? I asked. At the gym. David jumped in before she could answer. She was struggling with the weights, so I offered to help. How romantic, I'd said. Though something about how quickly he answered for her bothered me. Jessica laughed. David's being modest. I wasn't struggling, I was pretending to. I'd been watching him for weeks, trying to figure out how to talk to him. At least she was honest about being calculating. And what do you do for work, Jessica? I asked. I used to work in social services, helping families through difficult situations. But I'm transitioning into wellness coaching now, social services, mental health evaluations, difficult families. I should have paid more attention to that red flag. Over the next few weeks, Jessica became a constant presence. She'd show up for dinner uninvited, rearrange my kitchen to be more efficient, and offer advice on everything from my garden to my finances. You know, Maggie, she'd said one evening while washing dishes I never asked her to touch. David mentioned you handle all your own investments. That must be so stressful at your age. I've been managing money since before you were born. Sweetheart, of course, Jessica said quickly. I just meant with all the new technology and market changes. Maybe David could help take some of that burden off your shoulders. David, who'd never shown the slightest interest in my finances before Jessica arrived. David, who'd already asked me for money 3 times in the past year. just to cover his credit card payments. I appreciate the concern, I said, but I'm quite capable. She smiled. That perfect, practiced smile. Oh, absolutely, she said. I just worry about you being all alone in this big house, alone. Like it was a disease. The worst part wasn't Jessica's words, it was watching David change. My son, who used to call me every Sunday without fail, who brought me flowers every Mother's Day, who spent hours helping me clean out his father's study after the funeral. Suddenly, he was too busy for Sunday calls, too tired for our monthly lunch dates. Jessica thinks we spend too much time together, he told me once. She says it's not healthy for a man my age to be so dependent on his mother. Dependent. This, from the man who'd been living in my pool house rent-free for 2 years. But I bit my tongue because that's what mothers do. We swallow our words and hope our children come to their senses. Sometimes, though, hope just isn't enough. 2 weeks after their gym meet cute story, David announced they were moving in together. Into the house I'd bought as an investment property 3 years earlier. The same house I'd let him live in temporarily while he got back on his feet. After his last girlfriend drained his savings account, it'll be perfect. Mom, David had said, pacing my kitchen while Jessica sat quietly, that serene smile never leaving her face. Jessica loves the place, and we can really start building our life together. That's wonderful. Sweetheart, I said. Have you thought about when you might want to take over the mortgage payments? His face fell. We're family. Can't we work something out? We have worked something out. For 2 years, Jessica reached across the table, touching my hand gently. Maggie, I hope you don't think I'm pushing David into anything. The last thing I want is to come between you and your son. The last thing she wanted, right? Of course not, dear, I said evenly. I'm just practical about business matters. Maybe we could do a gradual transition. Jessica suggested sweetly. Start with David paying utilities, then move to partial mortgage payments. I'd hate for him to feel overwhelmed. Overwhelmed by paying his own bills at 32. That's very thoughtful of you, I said. David visibly relaxed. See, I told you Jessica would understand. She's great at finding solutions. I bet she was. Within a month, they'd moved into what David now called our house. Jessica redecorated immediately, tossing out furniture that didn't fit their aesthetic and replacing it with pieces that looked expensive but probably weren't. The utility bills stopped coming to me. The mortgage payments never started. When I called David about it, Jessica answered his phone. Oh. Hi Maggie, she said. David's in the shower. Everything okay? Just checking on the house payments we discussed, right? She said after a pause. We've been meaning to talk to you about that. Money's been a little tight with the moving expenses and my career transition. We were hoping to start fresh next month. Like they were some established entity instead of two people who'd known each other for 4 months. Of course, I said tightly. Next month will be fine. Next month came and went. So did the month after that. Then one afternoon, I drove by the house and saw a brand new BMW in the driveway. David's old Honda was nowhere to be seen. I called him that evening. Mom, what's up? Nice car. David's silence. Then, how do you know about the car? I own the house, remember? I drive by sometimes to check on my investment. That's kind of weird, Mom. Weird. Checking on property I owned was weird. Jessica needed reliable transportation for her new business, he continued. We got a great deal. How wonderful, I said, my voice steady. Speaking of deals, when might you start contributing to the mortgage? He sighed. Look, Mom, we need to talk. Jessica thinks well, we both think you're being a little controlling about the money stuff. Controlling? I repeated. For wanting my 32-year-old son to pay his own bills? It's just that you use the house as leverage. Like you're holding it over our heads. Jessica says that's not healthy family dynamics. Jessica says. Everything was Jessica says now. You're right, David, I said finally. We should definitely talk about healthy family dynamics. Good, he said, sounding relieved. I'm glad you're open to feedback. Jessica's really good at this stuff. It's what she did professionally. Yes, it was. And I was starting to understand exactly what Jessica was good at. That conversation with David happened on a Tuesday. By Friday, I was sitting in my lawyer's office. Margaret, are you certain about this? Asked Thomas Hartwell, our family attorney for the past 15 years. He'd handled Robert's will, helped me with the insurance claims, drafted David's rental agreement for the pool house. Absolutely certain, I said. Both properties? Both, I replied. The house on Maple Street and the beach house in Monterey. Thomas leaned back in his leather chair, studying me carefully. May I ask what precipitated this decision? Thomas asked carefully. I could have told him about Jessica's whispered conversation at the wedding. The one that technically hadn't even happened yet. I could have mentioned the BMW, the unpaid bills. The way my son now spoke to me like I was an inconvenience in his life. Instead, I simply said, I'm 63 years old, Thomas. I want to simplify my portfolio. These are significant assets, Margaret, he said, studying me. The beach house alone is worth over $2 million. Which is exactly why I want them liquidated properly, discreetly. Thomas nodded slowly. I assume David doesn't know about this. David assumes many things, I said. That's part of the problem. He'll be entitled to notification as your heir, of course. Not if I'm not dead, he won't. Both properties are in my name alone. I can do whatever I want with them, legally, yes, he said gently. But Margaret, think about the family implications. I had thought about them. I thought about Jessica's laugh when she told her friend she planned to have me committed. I thought about David calling me controlling for expecting him to pay his own mortgage. I thought about 40 years of sacrifice for a child who now saw me as an obstacle to his happiness. Thomas, I said, leaning forward. What do you think about people who bite the hand that feeds them? He gave me a small, knowing smile. I think they shouldn't be surprised when the feeding stops, exactly. How long for the sales to go through? I asked, if we price them right and you're not concerned about maximizing profit. We could close on both within 60 days, perfect. Price them to sell quickly. I want clean, fast transactions. Thomas made notes on his legal pad. Where would you like the proceeds deposited? New account. Different bank. I'll give you the details next week. And David? He asked softly. What about David? When will you tell him? I thought about that for a moment, about timing, consequences, and the quiet satisfaction of watching someone who'd taken you for granted discover exactly what they'd lost. I'll tell him when he needs to know, I said. Thomas raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. We'd known each other long enough for him to recognize my stubborn streak. One more thing, Thomas. I added. I want you to research someone for me, of course. Who? Jessica Morrison. 28 years old. Used to work in social services. I want to know everything, employment history, background, legal issues, anything that stands out. He hesitated only briefly. Any particular reason? Call it maternal instinct. Thomas jotted another note. I'll have something for you by next week. I left his office feeling lighter than I had in months. Not because I was selling the properties, those sales would hurt, especially the beach house, but because, for the first time in a long time, I was taking action instead of just reacting. Jessica wanted to play games with a helpless old lady. She was about to learn I wasn't nearly as helpless as she thought. The call came on a Thursday morning in October. David's voice was tight, almost panicked. Mom, we need to talk. Now, good morning to you too. Sweetheart, how are you? Don't just... Can you come over? Jessica's at work, so we can talk privately. Meaning, without Jessica's supervision. I'll be right there, I said. I drove to Maple Street slowly, savoring what I knew would be my last visit to the house as its owner. The BMW was gone. But David's new truck, another shiny purchase he definitely couldn't afford, gleamed in the morning sun. He opened the door before I could even knock. His hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it. We got a notice, he said, skipping any greeting. The house is being sold. They want us out in 30 days. How strange, I said. Who's selling it? Very funny, Mom. You know exactly who's selling it. I walked past him into the living room. Jessica had redecorated again since my last visit, everything white and gray now. Cold and sterile as a hospital. I'm afraid I don't understand your tone, David. Cut the act. You sold our house. I sold my house, I corrected. There's a difference. David stared at me like I'd grown another head. This is our home, Mom. We've been living here for months. We've built a life here, on my dime, I said calmly. We were going to start paying the mortgage. He argued. We just needed more time. 6 months wasn't enough. We had expenses, the wedding, Jessica's business startup costs, the cars. I interrupted, plural? How many cars do people need, David? He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. That's not the point. The point is, you can't just kick us out without warning. Actually, I can. Check your lease agreement. What lease agreement? I pulled the document from my purse and handed it to him. The one you signed when you moved in. 30 days notice for termination. Thomas had you sign it, remember? David's face went pale as he read. I thought this was just a formality. Family paperwork. All contracts are formalities, I said evenly, until someone breaks them. We didn't break anything, he said, his voice rising. You stopped paying rent after the first month, I replied. You bought luxury cars while stiffing me on utilities. And according to my research, Jessica's been telling people she owns this house. That last part was just a guess, but the way David's eyes darted away told me I'd hit the mark. She was just... People ask questions when you're not on the deed, he muttered. She was trying to avoid awkward conversations by lying. By protecting our privacy, I folded the lease and slipped it back into my purse. Where is Jessica today, David? At her new office. She's launching her wellness coaching business. With what money? She has investors. Do these investors know she's been living rent-free for 6 months? Mom, you're being ridiculous. We're family. Family helps each other. You're right, I said evenly. Family does help each other. Tell me, when was the last time you helped me with anything? I help you all the time. When we have dinner together, when I cook and you eat. I help with your technology issues. You've never fixed anything technological for me in your life. I cut in. I provide emotional support by telling me I'm controlling, by canceling our lunch dates, by screening my calls through your girlfriend. David sank onto Jessica's pristine white couch. This isn't fair, Mom. We're getting married. We need stability, then get jobs that provide it. We have jobs. Jessica has a startup with investors and I have a consulting gig. A part-time consulting gig that barely covers your truck payment, I corrected. That's not employment, David. That's wishful thinking. So? You're punishing us for not being rich enough for you? The accusation stung because it was so backwards. I'm protecting myself from people who see me as a bank account instead of a person. That's not true, isn't it? I asked quietly. When was the last time you called just to ask how I was doing? Not to ask for money or to complain about my behavior, but simply to check on your mother. David opened his mouth, then shut it again. Exactly, I said. You'll figure something out, sweetheart. You're creative when you need to be. I picked up my purse and headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and David, I looked back over my shoulder. The beach house is sold too. In case Jessica was counting on that for her retirement fund. The sound of him calling my name followed me all the way to my car. I didn't hear from David for 3 weeks. Then Jessica called. Maggie, we need to talk. No pleasantries, no fake warmth. Interesting. Double quotes. Hello. Jessica, how are you settling into your new place? We're staying with my sister temporarily. This situation is unacceptable. I'm sorry to hear you're having housing difficulties. Don't play games with me. You know exactly what you've done. Finally, the real Jessica. I've sold 2 properties that belong to me, I said calmly. I'm not sure why that concerns you. Those properties were David's inheritance. David's inheritance will be what I leave him when I die. Since I'm not dead, he gets nothing. You can't just cut your son out of your life because he fell in love. I'm not cutting him out because he fell in love. I'm cutting him out because he chose a manipulative gold digger over his mother. Silence. Then, you bitter old woman, there it was, the mask completely off. I may be old, Jessica, I said. But I'm not bitter. Bitter people don't take action. They just complain. David deserves better than this. You're right. He deserves a mother who raised him to be independent and grateful. Unfortunately, I failed at that. This isn't over, Maggie, though. I think it is. Unless you have something else to say? Actually, I do, she said. David's been really struggling since you kicked us out. He's been forgetting things, getting confused, having mood swings. I'm worried about his mental health. My blood ran cold. What kind of things is he forgetting? Conversations we've had, appointments, where he put things. Yesterday, he couldn't remember how to get to the grocery store we've been shopping at for months. That's concerning. Have you suggested he see a doctor? I think the whole family needs professional help, Jessica said smoothly. This dynamic between you two isn't healthy, Maggie. The way you're isolating him, manipulating him with money, it's textbook emotional abuse, is it now? I deal with these situations professionally. I know the signs, and what do you recommend? Family therapy, she said. Someone who specializes in elder care and family dysfunction. Elder care? I repeated, like I was some confused old woman who needed managing. That's very thoughtful of you, Jessica. I'll consider it. Good. I'll send you some referrals, doctors who really understand the complexities of aging and family relationships. I'm sure you will. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, thinking about chess games and strategy. Jessica was already positioning her pieces: confused son, manipulative mother, claims of elder abuse and mental decline. She was good, very good, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd warned me what was coming. The intervention happened on a Tuesday morning in November. I was making coffee when I heard cars in the driveway. Through the window, I saw David's truck, a sedan I didn't recognize, and a white van. The doorbell rang. David stood on my porch with Jessica, a woman in scrubs and a man in a suit. Mom, we need to talk. Good morning, everyone, I said evenly. Quite the crowd for a Tuesday. The man in the suit stepped forward. Mrs. Cooper, I'm Dr. Franklin from Serenity Springs Mental Health Facility. Your family has expressed concerns about your welfare. How thoughtful of them, I replied. Jessica moved closer, her voice soft but rehearsed. Maggie, we're here because we love you. David told Dr. Franklin about the concerning behaviors you've been exhibiting, such as David wouldn't meet my eyes, the property sales, Mom, he said finally. Liquidating major assets without any logical reason. Making impulsive financial decisions, I see, I said slowly. And this concerns you because? Because it's not normal, David said, his voice cracking. You sold our homes, Mom, you left us with nowhere to live. That's not rational behavior. Dr. Franklin looked down at his clipboard. Mrs. Cooper, are you currently taking any medications? Just vitamins. Any recent changes in sleep patterns, appetite, or mood? I sleep fine, eat well. And my mood has actually improved considerably. Your son mentioned you've become isolated, cutting off family relationships. I've become selective about who I spend time with. I corrected. The woman in scrubs stepped forward. Mrs. Cooper, I'm Nurse Patricia. We're here to help. Sometimes as we age, we don't recognize changes in our own behavior. How old are you, Patricia? Well, that's not relevant. I'm 63, I said. How old are you? 34, so? You're going to explain aging to someone who's been doing it 30 years longer than you? Dr. Franklin cleared his throat. Mrs. Cooper, your family has provided documentation of concerning incidents, forgetfulness, confusion, inappropriate financial decisions. What documentation? I asked sharply. Jessica pulled out her phone. I've been recording some of our conversations, Maggie. The things you've said, they're not rational. May I hear these recordings? This isn't a trial, Mom, David said. We're trying to help you, Jessica insisted. By getting you the care you need, by ambushing me with strangers? I said, Dr. Franklin can evaluate you properly. She pressed, make sure you're safe. Safe from what? From yourself. From making decisions that hurt you and everyone who loves you. I looked at my son, my baby boy. The one who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The one who cried when I dropped him off at kindergarten. The one who called me his best friend. Until Jessica came along. David, look at me, he finally did. Do you really believe I'm mentally incompetent? He swallowed. I believe you need help, Mom, and I believe Jessica knows how to get it for you, I see. I turned to Dr. Franklin. What exactly are you proposing? A 72-hour evaluation period, he said. We'll run some tests, do assessments, determine the best course of treatment, and if I refuse? Your family can petition for an emergency commitment if they believe you're a danger to yourself or others. I looked around the group. Jessica's expression was sympathetic but firm. David looked miserable but determined. Dr. Franklin seemed bored, like this was just another Tuesday morning pickup. How much is this evaluation costing? I asked. Insurance typically covers. I don't have insurance that covers psychiatric facilities. So who's paying for this? David shifted uncomfortably. We'll figure that out, Mom. With what money? You can't even afford rent. The important thing is getting you help, Jessica said smoothly, right? Help that someone else would pay for, I sighed. Fine, let me pack a bag. Relief flooded David's face. Thank you, Mom. This is the right thing. I'm sure it is, sweetheart. I went upstairs, grabbed a suitcase, and began throwing in clothes. While I packed, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Thomas. It's happening, I said. Are you certain you want to go through with this? Positive. Remember what we discussed. If I'm not back in contact within a week, execute everything, consider it done. The second call was to my bank. I need to access my safety deposit box this afternoon. Yes, I understand visiting hours are limited. This is an emergency. The third call was to someone Jessica probably didn't even know existed, someone who'd been very interested in our last conversation about background checks, Detective Morrison. It's Maggie Cooper. I think it's time we had that conversation about your sister. Serenity Springs Mental Health Facility looked exactly like what it was, a place where inconvenient people got stored away. Clean, clinical, and filled with motivational posters that fooled no one. Dr. Franklin handed me off to another doctor, Dr. Patricia Summers, who looked young enough to be my granddaughter, Mrs. Cooper. I'll be conducting your evaluation, she said. I understand your family is concerned about some recent behavioral changes. My family is concerned about their meal ticket disappearing, I replied. Dr. Summers made a note on her clipboard. Tell me about your relationship with your son. Which version? I asked. The son I raised, or the stranger who's trying to have me committed? You seem angry, wouldn't you be? Anger can sometimes be a symptom of underlying cognitive issues, she said calmly. Especially in patients your age. Patients. I was already a patient, Dr. Summers. How long have you been practicing? 5 years, she said. And how many family financial disputes have you seen disguised as mental health crises? I asked. Dr. Summers blinked. I'm not sure what you mean. I think you do. She made another note on her clipboard. Let's try some cognitive assessments. Can you tell me what year it is? 2025. And who's the president? Donald Trump. Unfortunately, do you know where you are? Yes, in a facility where my son's girlfriend is trying to have me declared incompetent so they can counter all my money, Mrs. Cooper, she said gently. That sounds like a paranoid thought, Dr. Summers, I said. Have you reviewed Jessica Morrison's employment history? I'm not familiar with. She worked in social services, specifically in adult protective services, evaluating elderly people for competency. She knows exactly how this system works. Dr. Summers stopped writing. How do you know that? Because I'm not paranoid, I said calmly. I'm prepared. Over the next 2 days, I went along with everything. The memory tests, the psychological evaluations, the endless questions. I answered each one honestly. And I made friends. Nurse Angela had been working at Serenity Springs for 15 years. She'd seen everything, every kind of family manipulation, every variety of betrayal, honey. She said while checking my blood pressure, I've seen this movie before. Pretty girl, older man with money, family members who suddenly develop concerns. How does it usually end? I asked. Depends on how smart the target is. Most of the time, the families get what they want. The old person gets medicated into compliance and the assets get redistributed. And the rest of the time? Angela smiled. Sometimes the old person turns out to be smarter than everyone thought. Hypothetically, I said. What would a smart old person do? Hypothetically, she replied, she'd document everything, every conversation, every test, every interaction. She'd request copies of her medical records. And she'd make sure someone on the outside knew exactly what was happening. Smart advice, I said. Angela shrugged. I've got 30 years until retirement, Mrs. Cooper. I see a lot of injustice. And I can't fix most of it. But sometimes I can help the right person fix themselves. On the 3rd day, Angela brought me a manila envelope. This came for you, she said. Legal mail. Inside was everything Thomas had promised. Jessica's complete employment history, including 3 previous jobs that had ended with allegations of elder abuse, 2 civil suits that had been quietly settled, and most importantly, a criminal background check showing a conviction for fraud in Nevada 5 years ago. Tucked at the bottom was a handwritten note from Detective Morrison. Mrs. Cooper, Jessica is my half-sister. I've been trying to build a case against her for years. Your situation might be exactly what we need. Call me when you get out. I folded the papers carefully and handed them back to Angela. Would you mind keeping these safe for me? Of course, she said, smiling faintly. Hypothetically speaking, when might you need them back? Tomorrow morning, I said. I have a feeling I'm about to be declared competent. Angela grinned. Funny how that works. Dr. Summers delivered the news the next morning, looking less than thrilled. Mrs. Cooper, I've completed your evaluation. While you show signs of stress and some concerning decision-making patterns, I don't see any evidence of cognitive impairment or mental illness. That would require continued treatment. How surprising, I said. However, she continued, I do think family counseling would be beneficial. The dynamics between you and your son seem complex. I'm sure they do. Your son and Jessica are here to take you home, she said. Home to the house Jessica probably thought she was about to inherit. David hugged me in the lobby, but it felt stiff, forced. I'm so glad you're okay, Mom. We were really worried, were you? I asked softly. Jessica stood beside him, her perfect smile restored. Welcome back, Maggie. I hope you're feeling better, much better, I said. Thank you. In David's truck, Jessica turned in her seat to face me. Maggie, I think we all learned something from this experience. Communication is so important in families. I couldn't agree more. I was thinking maybe we could have dinner tonight, she continued. Start fresh. That sounds lovely, I said. Why don't you both come to my house around 7? David glanced at her. Are you sure you're up for cooking? Oh, I won't be cooking, I said with a smile. I'm ordering in from that new place downtown. Great, Jessica said. We'll bring wine. Perfect. They dropped me off with hugs and promises to see me soon. I waved from my porch until their car disappeared, then went inside and made my calls. The first was to Detective Morrison. I'm out, I said. When can we meet? How about right now? He replied. I'll bring backup. The second was to Thomas. Execute everything tonight. Are you certain? He asked. Absolutely. And Thomas, make sure the process server knows they'll be at my house at 7. The third call was to Angela at Serenity Springs. I need copies of everything from my file, every note, every test result, every conversation, already copied and sealed, she said. I'll drop them by this afternoon. And the fourth was to the catering company downtown. I called the catering company. I need dinner for 8 people delivered at 6:30, something impressive. Money's no object. I spent the rest of the afternoon reviewing documents and getting everything ready. At 6:30 sharp, enough food for a small army arrived. At 6:45, Detective Morrison and 2 other officers pulled into my driveway in unmarked cars. At exactly 7 o'clock, David and Jessica knocked on my door. Come in, I called out. There are some people I'd like you to meet. The look on Jessica's face when she saw Detective Morrison was worth every penny this had cost me. Hello, Jess, he said. Been a while, David looked confused. Mom, what's going on? Who are these people? David, I said, meet Detective Morrison. Jessica's half-brother. Jessica's perfect composure cracked. Danny, what are you doing here? My job, Detective Morrison replied. He looked at me. Mrs. Cooper, would you like to tell them, or should I? I'll handle it, I said, turning to David. Jessica has done this before 3 times that we know of. She targets men with wealthy families, manipulates them into cutting off their relatives, and then orchestrates fake mental health crises to take control of their assets. That's ridiculous. David said. But his voice lacked conviction, is it? I asked. Detective Morrison, would you share what you found? Jessica Morrison, also known as Jessica Wells and Jessica Martinez, he began, has been under investigation for elder fraud in 3 states. She was convicted in Nevada 5 years ago for stealing an 80-year-old man's pension. David stared at her. Is that true? It's complicated, Jessica said quickly. That case there were misunderstandings. What about Margaret Thornfield in Arizona? Morrison continued. 83 years old. Committed to a facility after her nephew's girlfriend convinced him his aunt was incompetent. She died there 3 months later after signing over her estate. That was different. Jessica whispered, or Harold Brennan in Colorado, Morrison went on. 76, isolated from his family. Committed after his son's fiancé documented his declining mental state. He's still in a facility, been there 2 years. David sank into my couch, pale. This can't be real. I'm afraid it is, sweetheart, I said gently, sitting beside him. The engagement ring she's wearing, it belonged to Margaret Thornfield. Jessica kept it as a trophy. Jessica's hand instinctively went to the ring. You don't understand, she snapped. Those people were being taken advantage of by their families. I was protecting them. By stealing their money, I asked. By making sure they died alone in facilities while you spent their life savings? David looked at the ring, then at the woman he thought he loved. How long have you been planning this? Planning what? Jessica said, her tone sharp. David, you're letting your mother poison your mind against me. She researched me, didn't she? I turned to Detective Morrison. Did she? We found extensive files on your family, Mrs. Cooper, he said. Financial records, property information, your husband's obituary, David's employment history. She knew exactly what she was walking into. David stood slowly. You targeted me. This whole relationship, you targeted my family. David, please, Jessica pleaded. I love you. You love my inheritance, he said quietly. That's not true, Jessica Morrison. Detective Morrison interrupted, stepping forward. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, falsifying medical documentation, and elder abuse. As he read her rights, Jessica finally dropped the act completely. You think you've won? She hissed at me. Your son will never forgive you for this. You've destroyed his life just to prove you're smarter than me. No, I said quietly. I've saved his life and mine. David stood silently as they led Jessica away. When the police cars disappeared down the street, he turned to me, his face broken. Mom, I'm so sorry. I know you are, sweetheart. How can you ever forgive me? I thought about that for a long moment, about trust and betrayal, about love and disappointment. And the difference between forgiving and forgetting. David, I said finally. I forgave you the moment you realized what had happened. But forgiveness doesn't mean pretending this didn't hurt. I understand, he said softly. Do you? I asked. Because I need you to know how close we came to losing everything, not just the money, everything. David nodded, tears in his eyes. She almost destroyed us. Yes, she did. And you helped her? I thought I was protecting her from you, he said, his voice cracking. She made me believe. God, Mom, she made me believe you were the problem. That's what people like Jessica do, I said. They're very good at it, he swallowed hard. How do we fix this? I looked at my son, really looked at him for the first time in months. He looked older, tired, like he'd been carrying a weight he was finally able to set down. We start over, I said. Slowly, with honesty. And the houses are sold. I'm keeping the money. David winced but nodded. I deserve that. Yes, you do. I agreed. But David, when you're ready to rebuild your life, your real life, not some fantasy Jessica sold you, I'll be here to help. Why? He asked quietly. Because despite everything, I said. You're still my son, and mothers don't give up on their children. Even when their children give up on them. 6 months later, I was sitting on the deck of my new beachfront condo, watching the sunset paint the Pacific in shades of gold and pink. The place was smaller than the house I'd sold, but it was mine, and it was peaceful. David had called that morning to tell me about his new job. Real employment this time, with a steady salary and health insurance. He'd moved into a small apartment, was seeing a therapist, and had started paying back the money Jessica had spent using his credit cards. I'm proud of you. I'd told him. I'm trying, Mom. I'm really trying. I know you are. We had dinner once a month now. It was awkward at first, but it was getting easier. Trust would take time to rebuild, but we were working on it. Jessica had been sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. Detective Morrison said it should have been longer, but plea bargains were part of the system. She'd also been ordered to pay restitution to her previous victims, though most of them would never see their money. Again, the best part was hearing that Harold Brennan had been released from his facility and reunited with his family. Sometimes justice came slowly, but it came. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Cooper, this is Sarah Chen. Detective Morrison gave me your number. I think my stepmother might be doing to my father what Jessica did to you. Could we talk? I smiled and typed back, of course. When would you like to meet? People often asked me if I regretted how things turned out, if I wished I'd handled it differently. Been more understanding. Given Jessica more chances, the answer was simple: no. I'd learned something important over the past year. Being a mother doesn't mean being a doormat. Loving your children doesn't mean accepting abuse. And being 63 doesn't mean being helpless. Jessica had seen an easy target. A lonely widow who'd do anything to keep her son happy. She'd been half right. I was a widow and I did love my son. But I wasn't lonely and I definitely wasn't easy. The sun dipped below the horizon, and I raised my glass of wine in a silent toast. 2 mothers everywhere who've learned the difference between love and enablement. 2 children who've found their way back home, and to second chances, which sometimes come disguised as endings. Tomorrow, I'd meet with Sarah Chen and figure out how to protect her father from his predatory stepmother. Next week, I'd have dinner with David, and we'd continue rebuilding what Jessica had tried to destroy. Tonight, I'd sit on my deck and enjoy the peace that came from knowing exactly who I was and what I was. Worth being a mother means loving unconditionally, but it also means knowing when to stop feeding the hand that bites you. Some lessons are worth learning, no matter how much they cost. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.